Good morning, good afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, A Box With No Lid. A channel dedicated to working with raising and creating awareness around, but also learning and developing ways to heal from complex trauma. Now in today's video, this one's going to be a little button pushy, so please keep that in mind. It's going to want to bring up some of our more defensive aspects because I'm going to point out something that we all have. There's not a person breathing that doesn't have this. And we need to understand this aspect to be able to heal what we need to. Now, before I name this aspect or before I, talk about in detail what this is about, this is not about pulling everything apart. This is not about anything that you've done that is wrong. This is more about understanding a very key structure that we are biologically designed to have, that our modern structure of society is taken out of context. And for the majority of us, it shapes our entire existence, every facet of our life and being. Now, in previous videos, I raised about deficit relationships. And in this one, I want to go into a little bit more depth in that, and hence the triggering aspect of this. Now, in our childhood, every absence, either resulting from harm or just by simply not being there, creates a void. Children's, our child self or little children, and when I'm talking children, I'm talking pre-5 years of age, is viewed as a void, an absence. Now, in our adolescence or in our adulthood, that void manifests itself as a deficit, as a vacuum. Now, when we're looking at the voids in our early childhood, our child self comes up with, one, the reason for that void being there, and two, a plan to fix it, to heal it, to resolve it. And that shapes a very structured and fundamental belief because of how a developing young child, pre-5 years of age, minds work. And I'll get to why this is so critical in a moment. But you really need to grasp how embedded this belief is. Now, in our adolescence, we reaffirm that belief, but we also push it into the background because we're more dealing with the external world, to the point where it's running there, it's running the show, and we don't really have any conscious awareness of it. Now, in understanding how this relates to healing trauma, or healing our traumatic history, or traumatic past, our traumatic past, when you're looking at early childhood, created many of these voids, many of these deficits. Or if our traumatic experiences happened a little later on, shattered those, the structures around that void to the point of bringing it into such an ingrained need that our very core being pursues. And that's why understanding these deficits is so important, because they literally shape our perceptions, our interpretations. They shape what we desire, what we pursue, and what we are attracted to. They play a huge part in every facet of our life, and our reasons for being and our reasons for doing things. And this is where you need to be very, very mindful. This is not about pulling any of this stuff apart. This is not about everything you've done to this point now is wrong. It's none of that. It's understanding the mechanism. and understanding what we assign to what we have in our life today and the relationships we have today. The majority of us, all our friendships and relationships are deficit driven, primarily because in our society, the bonding with a biological mother is not important. You know, babies are taken away from the mother straight away. There is, before the umbilical cord is cut, there is no natural belly crawl latch on for first feeding. We're biologically designed to have all these connections and all these processes, not only in us, but in our mother, immediately post-birth and during the birthing process, and even back into the whole conception and trimesters. There's all these forms that create a secure sense of wellness and well-being to be able to explore our world, knowing that we belong and we are part of. And because that is so interrupted in the way children are born in hospitals and the way things are so depersonalized, and that is fed into by our screen-based lifestyles, that we become so detached from these internal mechanisms that we don't realize how much they create what we are attracted to. To give a very broad and overview example, as I used in the previous one, you know, if a daughter has a father deficit, that father deficit will shape how she is attracted to every guy or every partner in her life. If a son has a mother deficit, that will shape the same. Because of, you know, with our connections to our opposite sex growing up, shapes our interactions and how we connect in our relationships, friendships and romantic. It creates that framework. And if there are deficits there, those deficits, we expect this relationship we have now to fulfill those deficits. And when it doesn't, we don't know what to do. And this is why this is so important to understand it, because as I've said in the previous video, the person we are in those friendships and relationships with did not create the void. Therefore, it is impossible for them to fix it. They can help see us and support us as we fix it ourselves. And that's why I'm making this video now. Is when we start to push our buttons to heal, when we start to look at healing from our traumatic past, when looking at the ecology and all the different themes that are playing within our ecology, this is one of these huge themes. Because it shapes our desires, because it shapes what we pursue and what we think will fix us. Now, to take this back to my own example, because I was ripped from my mother at birth and how I was trafficked and sold and everything that happened afterwards, my entire pursuit in all the many years I was learning how to heal always revolved around that first moment of connection to my mother. And the very few relationships, romantic relationships that I've had, two to be precise, I instinctively looked at them in a level of intensity of connection that an infant has towards a mother. And that I know that at some level they've picked it up, and other women that I pursued in my past picked it up and freaked out. And that is not their fault, and it's perfectly natural. I was not aware that my core inner self was projecting that much need for a breadth and depth of connection. That, there is a complete understanding as to why that created all the problems that it did. But in understanding that, in also understanding that because of how I began, I approach every interaction and every connection with people as a child does. Because that is the base. Because my inner child has a plan. If I can fix all these people and make all these people happy, then I have this cute little family, and that's going to fix things. So one, I can fulfill that mother deficit, and I can fulfill that family deficit, and then I'll have what I need to heal. And then I can go out there and explore the world. Theoretically, perfectly plausible, perfectly true. There's nothing wrong with that belief that I know I have, still have as a core structure. But I also know that the interactions I have now cannot fulfill that void, where before I was not aware of it. And that part of me that was not aware of it could not work out why the void was not being fulfilled. And that's the point of this video. By having that awareness of our deficits that come from the voids of our early childhood, we can, when those doubts, when those triggers, when those things come up, we know that they are there to show us. The people in our lives today are there to show us. And we need to take that back into ourselves to heal those voids with those that created them. By understanding the beast that was our childhoods. And I don't mean beast as in a completely negative term. It's both positive and negative. It's a natural way of things, but it is a beast. It is a highly dominant animal, for want of a better analogy. Because these components are so key. And they shape, as I said, they shape what we pursue to heal. We need to understand the beast. Because the only way we can truly heal, not manage, we can truly heal from our traumatic past is to belong. And our voids manifested into our deficits shape every facet of our belonging. And we need to bring what we experience now back to our core inner self to heal those voids. To understand the nature of those voids. And to create a supportive enough ecology to balance those voids so they're no longer our deficits that are sucking things in. We are more interplaying and sharing rather than trying to fulfill a vacuum that is inside us. I know this is a little hard to get your head around, and it took me a lot of years of doing this shadow work, as people refer to, taking the time of looking at what is, obvious and common sense, and creating the steps to bridge in between all these different parts. And that's why looking at things as an ecology really helps, because when you understand all the different themes at play, you can start to recognize the nature of your ecology and the greater ecologies around you. So things start to make sense. And you get those aha moments because now you know why those things didn't work, why those relationships had the obstacles that they did. And it's not that any side was right or wrong. It was just the nature of that ecology, and because those voids and deficits weren't being fulfilled on all sides, why those things went the way they do. We are biological beings designed to be part of a biological ecology. We are designed that way. And every void that we have will create the deficits that are a part of that ecology. And the more understanding we have around this, the greater way we can make the adjustments, we can bring the awareness in, and we can put things into our internal gardens. That awareness and those resources and supports and understandings to be able to create a better balance. To bring what we learn now to heal that child within. Not the expectation that the world will heal, that the relationships we have will heal, but what we learn and what we experience, those positive interactions, we can heal those voids within. So as always, please be mindful. I welcome your questions. I welcome, your comments. Take this time. Journaling is a great way of looking at this sort of stuff, of helping yourself make sense of it. Mind maps are another great way. Take the time. Because the more we can understand about our ecologies, the easier down the road we will be able to heal them and get them into a more constructive and positive way. So as always, be kind and gentle with yourself, and I'll see you next time. Hope.